All right, welcome to another episode of Seeds of Music. I'm your host, Kyle Williams, and this is the #1 web show where aspiring independent artists and do-it-yourself musicians can learn right now how to gain wider exposure, grow a strong base of raving fans, and make a living doing what they love. So this is going to be a follow-up part 2 to 6 things you can do right now to bullseye your goals. I have Mark Brooks from artofbaseball.net on again. In part 2, we're going to cover how to manage your expectations, gain absolute clarity, and learn how to visualize. So stay tuned and we're going to jump right in. All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Seeds of Music. This is part 2 of 6 things that you can do right now to bullseye your goals. We got Mark Brooks back on the show. Thanks again for coming on for this second time.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, man. So without further ado, let's jump right into these last 3 bullet points that we want to hit up. Now, I know that we've talked a lot about expectations as kind of being this, it can kind of be like an obstacle to you achieving your goals. So what do you do to manage, I mean, how can expectations be a pitfall, and what do you do to manage them?
Well, I think it's important to understand the kind of the relationship that your expectations have with the decisions that you make and the behaviors that you have and the thoughts that you think. You know, I think that the thoughts and the behavior, or the thoughts specifically, are probably the most influential element in your productivity and the progress that you make over the span of, you know, a week, a month, and over a year. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about expectations, we're talking about trying to get really clear as to understanding where these intentions are coming from. So, for example, you have a musician who wants to be a successful solo artist, right?
Yeah.
And we want to figure out specifically why. And we talked about having clarity in the first interview. So if we understand why, that does a few things. Knowing why puts you in kind of the correct mindset in order to go about your day. It's going to help you kind of put yourself in a vibration that's going to be more conducive to progress. And then 3, we talk about expectations. If your expectations aren't going to resonate with what you're currently capable of doing, your learning curve is going to be a lot longer. You're not going to get the results that you want, and they require time. One thing that I always kind of insist that people try to achieve early on when they're trying to do something new is try to experience early wins. I think early wins, whether it's losing weight, feeling comfortable with speaking with people, you want to kind of be lucky in the beginning, experience an early win in the beginning.
Does that mean make it easy?
To an extent, make it easy so that you have an incentive, because whatever we do, we're always governed by an incentive. So, and I tried not to regress like I did last time, but the point is, when you have attainable goals, something that you can control, something within your control, and they're realistic, and your expectations are going to resonate with what it is that you're going to want to do, your progress is going to be quicker. And then when you see that, you're going to have the incentive to continue going on. And that's where I think discipline is kind of overrated. It's not necessarily about being disciplined. It's about having a strategy and a plan and then sticking to it. So it's about it's working hard, but it's also working smart.
Does discipline fall into place when you have that strategy? Like, is it easier to be disciplined when you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, a part of me feels like discipline doesn't even really exist. You know what I mean? I think that if you're forcing yourself to do something, that could be an indicator that you might be doing the wrong thing. Now, don't get me wrong. There are times when work ethic,
you have to do stuff that you don't like.
Yeah,
that's unavoidable.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you want to be an expert at something, or if you want to master something. Yeah, doing something during times when you don't necessarily feel like doing it.
Yeah.
There's going to be situations where that's what it calls for. But in the long run, I mean, I think longevity is key. And if you're challenging yourself enough, the passion, the desire to get lost in your work should be there.
So it seems like to distill this into something really easy to digest. Like, if you're a musician, which everyone watching this is, then this is like idea of not having real. You can expect to. I think you can expect to always do your best. Like if that, I think that's a healthy expectation. But when you get into expecting yourself to achieve things that, if you take a hard look at yourself, like that you might not be at that level with like your instrument, or you may not be at that level yet with songwriting, but you set expectations for very, very attainable things that are within your reach, because once you get that, then it's like a huge motivator boost, when you're able to achieve that, and that helps you climb to the higher ones.
Yeah.
And
I also think that it's also important to understand, are your intentions or your expectations based, or kind of like, are they going to be fulfilling egoic needs? Are your intentions based on the ego, or are they based on something that you kind of think is larger than that? And everybody has an ego, and everybody's going to want to,
that's a tough question, man.
Everybody wants to be distinguished and to be admired to an extent.
Because there's been great musicians that have had massive egos, but I can say that I feel like a few of them, their music suffered once their ego got to a point where they felt like they kind of got lazy with their songwriting, and they just became watered down. And then I can think of a few great examples for musicians that I kind of feel like have never really had a huge ego, and their careers have been very long and fruitful. Like David Gilmour is the first that pops into mind. Right. I watched that guy play, man, and I feel like this guy doesn't have an ego whatsoever. Tom York's another great example of another guy I feel like has keeps his ego in check. Though what's interesting, in interviews he's admitted to being like very insecure a lot. On the other hand, but I feel like when he gets on stage, it's not about being a rock star, even though Radiohead is like a huge band, huge rock band. It's not really about that for him. So it's kind of tough, because I feel like some musicians they'll want the fame and the stardom, and it kind of becomes like an ego thing, and it becomes the image thing, because the business is very much wrapped up in image. So that is an interesting question. But you touched on this idea of knowing what you want to do, like when we were talking about expectations before. And the next point I wanted to hit up is about gaining absolute clarity. What does that mean, and how can a musician or just anyone do that?
I think what a lot of us creatives kind of fall victim to, at least early in the process, is trying to do too much at one time. I know that's something that we had talked about. That's something that I kind of it was a pitfall that I fell in.
I think we talk about it every day.
Yeah, yeah. So the thing is, I guess the trick would be, and we harped on this in the beginning, was to kind of find that one thing, right? Yeah. That you can kind of hammer out until you start to get results. And it becomes everything else. Once you do that correctly and effectively, it makes everything else irrelevant or obsolete. So, I think clarity really just comes down to is just really understanding what it is that you want to do, understand how to go about doing it, and it's not deviating from it. And that could be where discipline comes in. It's kind of like it's more of a emotional or a mental skill set that requires a little bit of awareness to know. So when you feel like, okay, you're focusing on a product, right? And then you say, oh, well, here's a new shiny new approach, that's going to get me quicker results. And you kind of shift your focus onto this new thing, and you just deviated from the path that was going to get you to where you wanted to be. And I think what that really kind of comes down to is resistance. And this is something that Stephen Pressfield talked about in his book Turning Pro. And it's kind of a phenomenon that he kind of experienced, that whenever in the early part of his writing career, whenever he started on a project or a writing project, about halfway through, he would get another idea, and he would start working on that other idea, and he was just motivated, and then he'd get halfway through that one, and then he'd have another idea. And so it's kind of like this kind of passive form of self-sabotage that was happening. And it's really just resistance that's manifesting as, these new ideas. So I think it's important to understand that
knowing when you get distracted.
Knowing when you get distracted, and that it doesn't come in forms that you think, I mean, there's the obvious ones where, like, you get on Facebook or Twitter, or you turn on, television, friends. Those are obvious distractions, but there are other ones.
To turn off the television.
Right. There are other ones that will come up in the form of in unexpected forms, and I think not having clarity, experiencing resistance is an experience that forces you to be aware of how you're using your time, what you're focusing on, because that is the only way that you're going to make progress, even if it's just an inch.
Well, for people that, for a lot of musicians that don't have clarity, what's like a question that they could ask themselves? Like if they like, say they maybe have some goals that they want to achieve, like they want to release an album, or they want to gain more fans, or get more exposure, and they're struggling in that, and the core of the problem might be that they might not really understand why they're making music, and it might not be giving them enough motivation to do that.
Absolutely.
And so well, I guess I kind of answered the question that I was like,
well, a lot of musicians, you're right, a lot of musicians don't know why they want to play music. I think for some it's because they feel like they're not good at anything else. For others, it's because they don't want to work for the man. For others, it's because they want to do something unique and be admired. And those are all, I guess, I mean, some of those are admirable reasons to go about creating music. But I think
it's something else, man.
Well, yeah, and so how you go about getting clear with that? First of all, there's no excuse with not finding that reason out.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. There's no excuse if you don't have the tenacity to sit down with the pen and a sheet of paper and write down why you want to be a musician, and even if it doesn't come out immediately, stick with it. That's a really interesting exercise that I think Steve Pavlina kind of proposed on his blog. That's a really famous blog. And so, so there is no excuse. I mean, will it take time? Yes, but it should be worth it to you if you want to experience progress, if you want to do something with your talents and your skill sets that you have as a musician. But clarity is key.
It reminds me of this certain segment in Mastery, the book Mastery by Robert Greene, and I've met a lot of people, a lot of guitarists, musicians, like saxophone players, in Los Angeles, and they say that they love to play music, and they enjoy playing music or performing it, and I thought even though I've met a lot of musicians that love to perform music, there's some that don't love to perform. They love composing music, or recording it in their room, or listening to it all the time, and so there's like there's like many facets of, at least I've found, of music that people can enjoy in that capacity. And what I wanted to share about this segment in the book Mastery by Robert Greene is when he talks about John Coltrane and how it wasn't really John Coltrane. It wasn't music per se that was pushing John Coltrane to become the greatest jazz musician of his era. It was the fact that he was a very intense and deep individual who couldn't express his emotions in words. And so music became an outlet for that expression of what he wanted to say. And
right.
Ever since I read that, like, it just for me, and the light bulb went off. It was like a profound moment where I kind of felt, maybe there's something like even deeper than music, and whatever lies deeper that lies deep down beyond music itself, that could be the real why. That could be the real reason that you would want to have music as be an avenue for that.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that helps anyone listening to this. They can kind of use that as a way to figure out like really why they do what they do, why they play music.
Mm-hmm.
So the last point I wanted to hit up with you is visualization. And I know that I do it every morning for 10 minutes. I sit down and I visualize, my goals, or visualize a point that I want to be in the future. How do you go about visualization, and how has it helped you achieve your goals?
Well, I think you need to understand that there's visualizing is practical. There's a practicality to doing it.
So it's
There's
not like new agey weird.
well, some people have made that to be new agey and kind of pretentious. So depending on what space you hear it from, I get turned off from it as well. But I mean the results, or of it, whenever it's applied correctly, I think it's great. I mean, just for the fact that it makes you feel good, So the practicality would be that when you visualize, your brain doesn't know that you're not doing it. So if you realize the potential of being confident, or being present, or being creative, if you understand how important that is to be when you start to create music, then you can understand that getting into those emotional states can be induced by an intention, right?
Yeah.
So that intention could come from sitting down, trying to disconnect, and trying to what we've discussed as getting in between the space between thoughts. So you have one thought.
Wayne Dyer.
And you have another thought, and then you have the space in between, and then in that space is where a lot of creativity comes from, and that's why people use drugs, or they use other sorts of external catalysts to kind of reach that state. But the thing is, yeah, exactly. But the thing is you can actually get to that state by meditating, or by visualizing. And so for me, what I like to do are two things. I like to visualize first I like to meditate and try to get kind of a objective view of what my thoughts are, to kind of observe what it is that I'm thinking. And that kind of just helps me to calm down, so that I can kind of get into that space to be a little bit more creative, and to kind of push myself into an experience of being in an experience that I'd like to be in. So I would sit for maybe 5 or 10 minutes and try to, focus on my breathing, quiet my mind. And then after about 5 or 10 minutes, then I would start thinking about how I would like to see my life, a year or 6 months, a year, 5 years from now, and try to actually experience those experiences as though they're already happening. Now, what that does is that kind of ties into the first topic that we talked about clarity, and knowing what it is that you want and getting into that space. So for me, when I visualize, being able to travel, having the resources to travel around the world, being, location independent. And a lot of those things I've taken large steps to accomplishing. I've pretty much done it. And I think it's come down to just really going about my day and experiencing my days as though I'm already in that experience. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And that might be kind of an abstract concept for some people, but I think if they give it a try, even if they're skeptical, if they're willing to give it a try, I think that could be an interesting experience for anyone.
But you're saying for you, it's been has it been a significant portion of your success? Do you think?
Absolutely, I think it's probably been my one thing.
One thing. Okay.
It's been my one thing. So, and I mean, that's another skill set. That's a learning curve. I mean, you may try to visualize something, and then you'll find yourself that you're visualizing the opposite.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I mean, just understand that it's a skill that takes time. But, and you may have already heard this concept from that book, The Secret, and I mean, I guess to an extent that it is true, but
The
The Secret did a horrible job of understanding the second thing we talked about, which was managing expectations. The book was kind
That's
of
getting pretty new agey.
that's pretty new agey. Yeah, yeah. Achieve, experience wealth and abundance. All
Yeah,
you have
I
to
think
do is think
you
positive
got to do
thoughts.
more. I mean, you got to do more than just I mean, it begins with your thoughts, but it always falls with action. That's why I'm such a
I think it falls with action, and then I think it also falls with something else really important. That's detachment.
yeah.
You can't want something or feel like you're missing something and bring it into your life. Those are two contrasting elements. So yeah, action very important, but so is detachment. You know,
How do you detach yourself from something that you want really, really
just
bad?
just having trust, man. Just trusting the process. I think it's just trust. If you can't trust yourself, I mean, I don't think that you know that's probably something that you'd have to work on. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
but you can't not trust yourself and do big things. You can't not trust yourself and go out and communicate to other people
Yeah, you can't
effectively.
you can't trust yourself and not trust yourself and then
Be
play your
creative.
instrument well or
Yeah.
yeah. That's a big self sabotaging thing right there. So I guess what real quick, what would be a quick like exercise for visualization like that'd be easy for someone who's never done it before and they're kind of skeptical.
Yeah. So just you could sit in a chair if you're in a car listening to this on the podcast. Make sure you pull over. But yeah, you could just sit, close your eyes, maybe try to go to a quiet place, and really just focus on your breathing. I think one thing you could do is focus on the tip of your nose, and maybe just do that for 4 or 5 seconds,
Which is
and
pretty
then
big for me, way out here.
for the both of us. And so yeah, just focus on that space, focus on your breathing, and then what you'll find out is that the mental chatter starts to quiet down, you know, and then you could continue to breathe, and then once you start to observe the phenomenon in your body, certain sensations, your heartbeat, and you realize that your blood pressure starts to lower and your heart rate starts to slow down. This is where you can start to be a little bit more creative, because this is the creative space. You know what I mean? This is you're being present. You're in the present moment. And so once you get to this space, which could take 10, for some of you maybe 20 minutes, this is when you can start to visualize something specific, and you can even visualize the question that you wanted answered, which was, why are you doing it in the first place? So that could be, you could visualize your answer. But I think an interesting exercise would be to visualize how you would like to experience your future, 6 months, a year from now, and to see where that takes you.
We should put you on a meditation, a Seeds of Music meditation audiobook audio podcast. Just have you say that and people listen. Because I was actually getting very relaxed there.
Oh, really?
But unfortunately, I got to wrap this power interview up with a quick question, fun question. Actually, you know what this question is. What is your favorite album, and what would your life be like if it never existed? And I'm going to try and guess, because I'm supposed to know you really well.
Forgot you were going to answer this question, or you were going to ask this question. So I wish you would have told me. Oh man, favorite album, what my life would be like without it. Crap. I have a lot of favorite albums, man.
Let's go for Impact.
Impact.
Let's go for Impact during high school.
Okay, high school.
I would narrow it down, since I know you'll narrow it down.
That helps. That helps on. Okay, well, if it's high school, it would probably be Crow Left of the Murder, Incubus.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, either that or Transistor 311.
All right.
But let's go college days.
Okay, so
I have
college.
two also.
Okay.
College days, it would be Ray LaMontagne's Trouble. Huge,
Oh, right.
huge album, impactful album. And then Karen Ann's Nolita. That was
okay.
yeah, that was one of my favorite albums. I wore that album out. So, and that when I hear those, that music, I automatically think of the summer days that I'd spent listening to that album. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And if I hadn't have met you, then I wouldn't have been introduced to my favorite albums.
which was
or to Ray LaMontagne, who's like my favorite like male solo artist. But I haven't listened to Nolita to Karen Ann in a long time. But I constantly listen to Ray LaMontagne. So pretty much, I just need. I mean, if a Terminator got sent back in time and shot you in the head, then I wouldn't have any of my favorite albums. So.
right.
All right, Mark. Thanks again for coming on, man.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. This is great. I think you're doing a great job, man. Keep it up, because the people that you've had on the show, man, have really interesting stories, and I think it's if you're a musician who really takes their progress seriously, I think you never know enough to be a skeptic, and I think that if you are humble enough to learn from as many people as you can, you're gonna achieve great things. I really do think that. So, yeah, great job, man.
All right, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Okay,
awesome.
See you later.
Later.
And that wraps up part 2 of this interview series on 6 things you can do right now to bullseye your goals. We had Mark Brooks from artofbaseball.net on the show. Make sure to check out his links I have posted up below. Also, don't forget to sign up for the email newsletter. This is the best way to stay up to date with all things happening at Seeds of Music. Next, if you like this interview, feel like these 3 bullet points that we covered are really going to help you out, then just make sure to hit the like button below, hit the share button below, and share it with everyone that you know. Lastly, comment on the video. What was your greatest takeaway from the interview? How will you apply what you've learned? And is there anyone that you know you would like to see interviewed, or you would like to be interviewed? Just send an email to me. It's my personal email address for the site, kyle.seedsofmusic@gmail.com. Don't be shy, and see you in the next interview.